to the power of one. Today, we are going to have a very adult conversation for women. We are going to be speaking about menopause, what we need to know, how we can get through it. And I think I'm going to ask a very important question. What do our husbands or spouses or partners need to know to help us through this period? Also, we're going to be speaking to a very great doctor at Abington Jefferson Hospital. Welcome to the show, Doctor. Dr. Grover Wink, please tell the viewers about your professional career in medicine.
First, thank you for having me on. It's really exciting to be here and talk about a topic I'm really passionate about. But I started my career back as a college student in Carnegie Mellon University and graduated in 2003. And then I actually am a non-traditional medical professional in that I went on and worked in the banking world after college and worked for a large bank and decided that I wasn't really doing anything meaningful for the community. I felt kind of like a cog in the wheel. And I grew up watching my father, who's a family medicine physician and continues to practice till today into his 70s.
Okay.
And, felt like family medicine, or at least medical school, might be a good path for me. So I went on to Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine in my late 20s, and then moved on to the Jefferson Health System for residency and graduated from Abington Family Medicine in 2017. And then I went on to complete my faculty development fellowship at Tufts University School of Medicine and gained a master's of medical education there. And I really wanted to stay in academia and medical education. So I actually went on to start a new residency program in New Hampshire with Tufts and with the HCA hospital system there, and then came back to my roots. And actually, I'm core faculty now back at Abington Family Medicine, where I graduated. And since then have really just enjoyed being an educator in a place that gave me so much.
That's awesome. So let's talk about this subject, which I don't think a lot of people talk about. We're going to talk about menopause and when it occurs. You know, it's something to me, whenever I say to another female or somebody else, I'm beginning this. I don't think I'm the beginning stages. I don't know whether I'm in the middle. I hope I'm at the end. I'm probably not. I'm only 53. But I'll say something about menopause and everybody says the same thing. Oh, you're getting hot flashes. I'm like, there's so much more to what I'm going through other than being hot. Yes, I am hot all the time. But tell the viewers, what is menopause and when does it occur?
So, menopause is actually, unfortunately, the natural aging process in women. We're born with a certain amount of follicles. They get released as unfertilized eggs, and then we have our menstrual cycle. And as those follicles start to decrease, we naturally have subsequent hormonal changes that our ovaries, where these follicles live, are responsible for, predominantly in estrogen and progesterone. And then at around the age of 50 is when the average woman goes through menopause, but menopause is truly defined by 12 months of not having a period. And it really is 12 consecutive months of not having a period is what is the medical definition of menopause. And even though the average age is 50 to 51 in the US, it actually can occur from 45 to 55.
Okay. But so premenopausal stage is what a woman goes through, but still has the same symptoms, but may get her menstrual periodically. Is that right?
Yes, in fact, that's the beginnings of perimenopause. So, perimenopause actually starts in the early 40s. And one of the first things women will come to me and say is, my period is a little bit different this month, or I'm not getting it every month, or it's heavier or lighter. And that's when we start to think about a woman being in what's called early perimenopause. And then you start to hear a lot of those traditional symptoms starting in the late perimenopause period, which usually hits women in the mid 40s into their 50s till they hit the menopause, that end of the 12 months where there's no period.
So, what are the three stages of menopause?
So it can be divided into perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. And like
Okay.
I mentioned before, perimenopause is divided into early and late, depending on the symptoms and kind of what we're seeing in the menstrual cycle.
Okay. Now let's speak about these symptoms. So, and it could probably vary from woman to woman. Is
Oh,
that right?
yes.
But
Yes.
I believe there is a lot of them. And Doc, I got all of them. So let's talk about let's talk about all of these symptoms.
So you're right. I think a lot of people are under the assumption that it's just hot flashes, but it isn't. In fact, hot flashes and sexual dysfunction are the two top symptoms that women experience. And we see this really in the late perimenopause into that transitional time to menopause period. But that can start in that early perimenopause period in your early 40s. Other symptoms that we see are sleep disturbances, weight gain, depression and mental health issues,
Mhm.
cognitive issues. A lot of women will complain of brain fog. This is also a
Mhm.
time where we start to see some increase in the rates of dementia diagnoses in women.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, you can have muscle and joint pain, skin and hair changes,
I have
vaginal.
all of that. Yes, I'm
It's
telling you.
really unfortunate.
And it's like now this is real. So I'm doing a presentation and I'm just talking and I was like, okay. And then I was like, okay, I know where I was. So and I may stop in like mid sentence. I have the air conditioner. I'm telling my husband, and I'm usually not a hot person. We have the little portable air conditioner in our room. So I'm like, keep that on. He's like, and he's usually the one that's like usually hot, but he's freezing. I'm noticing the skin changing,
Mhm.
and I'm short. I'm I'm moody. It's like, okay, whatever. And I just want to be by myself. If I could like not go to work, I would be okay. You know what I mean? I don't want to interact with anybody.
Yeah, and everything you're experiencing is incredibly common, and it really speaks to how much we underestimate hormonal shifts and changes. Estrogen is an incredibly important hormone in a woman's body, and it is responsible, its lack and decline is actually responsible for a majority of these symptoms that you and many other women experience.
So with me being in the first stage,
Mhm.
because or let's say women, a woman who's in the first stage and she has not gone without a menstrual cycle for a full 12 months. How long can menopausal all stages? How long can this period last?
I don't know if you want to know the answer to that.
I don't, but tell me.
So, in the perimenopausal stages, that was early before you hit those 12 months, that can last anywhere between 4 and 8 years.
What you
And
say, Doc?
4 and 8 years, I know. Yeah. And then once we hit that menopause period into the postmenopause period, the average is really 7 years, but it can go on for up to 10 years. And there is a very small percentage of women who unfortunately experience it up for 20 years. I have not met somebody like that. Most of my female patients are between that 7 to 8, 9 year mark, where they're
Wow.
finally done with everything and anything. And unfortunately, we do see higher rates of these lengthier symptoms in Black and Hispanic women the most.
Mm,
So there's definitely a difference in the way some of our communities face these symptoms.
that's powerful. That's powerful. Speak about overeating. Is that a symptom also?
So, weight gain in general is a symptom.
Okay.
And the reason for that is multifold. So, first of all, we can talk about estrogen all we want, and that triggers a number of hormones that are related to how full you feel or hunger signals. And so, you will see yourself feeling more hungry. But what that
Mm,
eventually leads to is a series of behaviors that can lead to overeating or binge eating. But all
okay.
those other symptoms that I mentioned also play a part. So, for example, if you're having sleep disturbances and you're up at 1 in the morning, so many of us go and grab a snack and
Right.
we'll sit in front of our phone or we'll in front of the TV or a book and snack through the night. So there's really, unfortunately, the complex symptoms that come with menopause and perimenopause really do contribute to that overeating, weight gain. The lack of estrogen also slows down your metabolic system, deposits fat around your belly that a lot of women can't get rid of unless they go on a medication or have to jump through hoops to exercise. And even then, they're not able to do it.
I'm glad you spoke about the medication. Do you prescribe medication for your patients that are going through whichever stage for the symptoms or just for the weight gain?
No. So, what's great and not so great about the medicines out there is that you have a lot of symptom control medication. So, I
Hmm.
can give you something like Manjaro, Wegovy, those injectable medications, Ozempic, that we can do for weight loss. But unfortunately, those are all band-aids in a sense. You really have to build good habits. There are lots of great medications that are hormonal and non-hormonal for women's symptoms, specifically the symptoms that we see with those hot flashes, sometimes symptoms that women have with urinary dysfunction or vaginal dryness. So we have medications out there, but the reality is that estrogen is what was fueling everything. And unfortunately, not every woman can be on hormonal therapy with estrogen in it due to several different kinds of other diagnoses and contraindications. But and even then, when you get on those hormonal therapies, you have a finite amount of time. But really, all we're doing is really putting a band-aid and helping women have a better quality of life, which is very important. But nothing can take away the fact that our estrogen and progesterone levels have decreased and have, we're in this situation without choice.
Yeah. So we just have to basically figure out what will help us get through it naturally.
Yeah. And then you want to get yourself, and there's a lot of medications that we can take that can get us towards the end of that postmenopausal period, where even after, while you're going through the menopausal period, when those symptoms end and you enter the postmenopausal period and your symptoms kind of dissipate, that's what we're trying to get women to, is so that they can pull off those medications and then the body naturally is just in that other state.
Okay. So I did hear you speak about mental health. And so, how bad can it get as far as the mental health aspect? And then I'm going to put the end part on there as far as like for a spouse, for a boyfriend, for a mate, because there are times when I am short. You know what I mean? And it's like even when you have your menstrual and you
Yeah.
have
Oh,
PMS,
yeah.
sometimes you're like, oh my goodness, I know I'm being difficult, but it's kind of hard to turn off.
Mhm.
How bad can it get mentally with the mental health for someone who's going through any stage of the menopausal period?
So it really can get bad. When I was, I've talked about this in other venues, and when I was preparing for this presentation the very first time, one of the things that came up was that the number one thing that women need during this time is to be taken seriously, because the, for example, the term hysterectomy comes from this idea of that women were hysterical back in the day. We didn't
Mhm.
know why. We didn't understand anything. And so our solution was to remove the uterus, to get rid of the hysteria. And there is so much a negative attitude, negative connotation with uh, with the mental health aspect of menopause and the symptoms itself, that if you look at the literature, one of the best things a mate can do is really try to understand what is happening in the body and why is this happening, and how you really don't have a lot of control. In terms of mental health, one of the big things that we have seen is that if you have had traumatic events or a history of trauma that has been unresolved, postpartum depression, these are things that set you up for more severe depressive
Mm,
symptoms in the menopausal, perimenopause, and menopausal period. And so it's really important that not only you have a, if you are in a relationship, that your partner understand what you're going through, but also really understand what they can do to help you. And that could be simple things like, let's go on a walk together.
mhm,
Let's change our diet together. Diet
mhm,
and exercise is an incredibly important aspect of all forms of life, no matter what stage you're
mhm,
in, but it becomes even more important in this perimenopause to menopause transitional period. Reducing ethanol, quitting smoking. You can partner with your partner in different ways and work on figuring out what works for you. Because at the end of the day, as someone who practices family medicine, even though I have the ability to dispense medicine, I'm always going to offer the natural options first
mm,
because
mm,
I think they go further along. You don't have side effects from exercise unless you have a
mhm,
pre-existing condition, but you can get side effects from other medicines. And then
mhm,
also, I tell my patients, if you've had this traumatic history, if you've had any form of depressive symptoms and you've been on medication before, consider going back on it. There's no harm in that. Um,
mhm,
those medications are actually indicated for these kinds of times. There are certain medications that are better for just hot flashes, but if you were on Zoloft for a good chunk of your life and you feel like you need it again, don't have shame around it. Have your partner empower you to
mhm.
help you get the help that you need if you need it.
Okay. Doc, can women still get pregnant during any stage of menopause?
Yes. So during the perimenopausal period, the reason it's called that is because you haven't hit those 12 consecutive months. So you still may be ovulating. So I've definitely met some women in their mid 40s who are very surprisingly pregnant because they are still ovulating. They still have a couple of eggs left that can be fertilized. So I would definitely recommend that if you're in that perimenopausal period and you're not interested in getting pregnant, to use protection. But once you hit the menopausal period where you've had those 12 months, it's very, very challenging to get pregnant, if at all.
So, in the beginning stages of menopause, if someone gets pregnant, they don't have to start all over again. It'll like after they have the baby, it'll still continue, right?
Yes and no. So it'll continue until the body naturally was supposed to go through menopause. And then that would be
Mm,
the difficulty in my mind to be going through menopause while trying to raise a toddler. But your body still has to go through that step of the natural aging and discontinuation of the menses. And so yes, you will still go through those things. You won't start over. But I'm raising a toddler now, and I cannot imagine having hot flashes and raising a toddler at the same time.
right. I'm sure it would be challenging. Yes. So speak to the female viewers and tell them how important it is to stay up on their yearly exams.
Yeah, I cannot stress this enough as a family medicine physician. Health maintenance and preventative care are critical. I think that the big things to remember as you start entering this period of time is, go at least once a year to your PCP. Make sure you're up to date on your mammogram and your cervical cancer screening, and eventually your colonoscopy and colon cancer screenings. Get vaccinated. There are certain vaccines that are really important to have as we get older and they're age dependent. But I think it's really important that we stay in touch with our doctors and we also get blood work on an annual basis, making sure everything's going okay. I have women that develop all kinds of new things as that estrogen pulls back. They might develop a thyroid disorder. And so you really want to keep a log in your mind or on paper in your phone of all the things that you're starting to experience that feel new for you, and ask the question. That's why we're there. We dedicate extra time during the annual physical, and we want to be able to answer all of your questions and make sure you're staying on top of things, because prevention can really go a long ways. And then finally, I would say that as women enter this period, as I mentioned before, diet and exercise are critical. And when you exercise, it's not only cardiac exercises to get your heart rate up, but strength training exercises, because the strength training is what strengthens those bones to prevent osteoporosis down the line, because that's the one diagnosis that actually can be fatal if not treated appropriately. Because if you break bones because your osteoporosis is so severe, you really start developing other issues that shorten your lifespan. And then stay mentally healthy, whether that's seeing a therapist, engaging in mental exercises, because those cognitive changes are going to come, that brain fog is going to come. But what makes one menopausal patient different from another is the one that's engaging in a full, satisfying life with relationships, hobbies, intellectual stimulation, and the one that isn't could be the difference between dementia, which also shortens our lifespan and is really a terrible disease that we watch it and watch progress. And it's just it's not something I wish on anyone. And so if you can do anything now to prevent that, it is taking care of your physical, mental, and spiritual health.
Now go back to the physical. You said not only the cardio. So give an example as to what we can do to strengthen our muscles and things of
Yeah.
that.
So a lot of organizations, including the CDC, recommend two types of exercises: the cardiac exercises that are high intensity or moderate intensity, and then the strengthening exercises. If you do moderate intensity exercises, this should be something that you feel like, I am breaking a sweat. This does not feel comfortable. And you want to do at least 150 to 300 minutes a week. So that kind of translates between 3 and 5 hours a week, however you want to divide that up. If you're a little bit more athletic, you could do high intensity exercise where you really can't talk while you're exercising. These could be our runners, our marathon trainers, and that you can actually do 75 to 150 minutes a week. So just on like 2.5 hours to about 3 hours a week. And that will still give your body the health benefits as well as your heart the health benefits that it needs. And then we recommend strength training at least 2 to 3 times a week, whether that's using, and you want to use weights or some kind of resistance band. You want to put pressure on the bones, which sounds counterintuitive. Why would I put pressure on the bone if I want to strengthen it? But the way bones are made and the way the recycling of different proteins and things happens is through putting stress on those bones. So taking a resistance band, working your biceps and your arms, or, pushing in the gym, you can find these plates where you lie down and you push against a plate with weights on it. You want to work your legs and your arms specifically, your whole body, honestly, but these kinds of things where you have weights on are great ways to exercise. There are some women out there that will purchase ankle weights or wrist weights, and they'll walk. That will be their way of doing it. And that's perfectly fine. You're doing both aerobic and strength based. You're helping your heart and your bones. That's all we ask for.
Okay. Well, doctor, I thank you so much. I'm going to try to get through this. I don't have no other choice but to try to get through this. So I'm going to tell my husband, listen, just keep me happy. Give me some crabs and some shrimp, and I'll take some coolers and some wine. We'll get through this period. But I do thank you so much for educating us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining me. I hope this was very informative. This is a part of life. So we have to know how to get through it because we're going to go through it. So I hope it was very informative. And I will see all of you beautiful ladies on the other side when we are smiling, shining, and having a great time. Peace and love.